You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
What's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network. This is your RamsHouse, Los Angeles Rams segment, and we are excited to get into it because we have very good news. As everyone knows, head coach Sean McVay is returning to the sidelines for this Rams team, and there's going to be some changes on the staff. I'm sure some personnel changes, but this is like the last time, or I should say the first time since McVay got here, where I've been this excited about an offseason and looking to kind of how this team can not just rebuild, but reshuffle and grow where they are to get back to where they were. It's been really interesting. So excited to get into that. Show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. You get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's free money. Put in $100, you get $50 free. You can bet on the remaining of the NFL playoffs or basketball, hockey, any sport. They have everything, and it's at betonline.ag. Use that promo code BELIEVE. Joining me as always is my co-host, the better half of the show, the madman Jamal Madni. What's up, brother? Happy Monday. How was the weekend? How's life treating you?
Happy Monday, Ryan. Excited to talk about some Rams. It feels like it's been all conversation of LA football the last few days has been the Chargers collapse. So excited to talk about the defending Super Bowl champions. We're only allowed to say that for a couple more weeks. So I really want to soak it up as much as possible and talk about the Rams offseason with you, of course.
Yes, exactly. We got a few more weeks as the defending champs. So as bad as this season went, the records that we didn't want to break that were broken, they're still the defending champs here for what, three more weeks?
3 more weeks,
give or take. Yeah. So we can enjoy that in solace. But the big thing, Sean McVay announcing he's coming back. And it seemed like, Jamal, like this was our big thing. We both thought he was gone. I thought usually when you start having those thoughts, your mind's kind of made up, you're leaning that way. And so our big thing and my big thing was like, look, if you're not 100% all in, like you shouldn't come back. I'm not saying that with any disrespect, but if you are valuing things more than what that is, as someone that runs a business, if someone comes to me, which has happened, and said, hey, I love being here, I like it, but I also want to be doing something else, whether it's parenting, another job, whatever, then it's like, it's probably best for both of us to not be in this situation, because we need someone that's all in and giving all their time to this job, because that's what it takes. Head coaching is hard in the NFL. It's a lot of hours. We talked about a lot, whatever it was, a week or 2 weeks ago, about how it takes a lot away from your personal life, from your family, from what you want your family to be. And so we, and I specifically, really thought that he was going to be gone. But he comes back, and based on what and it hasn't been a full-on press conference, but based on what I read and what I've kind of heard here and there, I feel good knowing that I think he is, at least for this next year, maybe it's only one more year, but is all in again. I think I've talked about a lot, Jamal, how when you play golf, it can be a horrible round of golf, and you get that one birdie, and it just gets you wanting so much more. And I think these last 6 weeks, with Baker's probably not going to be the quarterback. Well, obviously not the starter. Stafford's coming back, but probably won't be on this roster going forward. But I think the fun they had once they knew the season was like, they weren't striving for playoffs anymore. It was just about getting better, finishing with your guys. I think that did a lot for Coach McVay in saying like, okay, found some fun in it again. I got some offensive ingenuity for a guy that didn't know the playbook, and we kind of just had to make things up as we went, and we had some fun with it. And then I also think he realized that, okay, we saw what didn't work this year. Injuries obviously were against us, but we saw some coaching stuff, some personnel stuff that didn't work. Now I can go into the offseason with some clarity of like, okay, what worked a year ago? What didn't work this year? And what can we do to make things work again? And I think he got rejuvenated by that a little bit, got excited, and I'm sure got his wife's blessing. And so happy to say Coach McVay is back. Your thoughts on the official announcement that he is the head coach again?
I'm really happy, Ryan. And, it's how I think his narrative is supposed to be told. I'm very happy for him. I'm surprised a little bit. And it just reaffirms, I think, that 2023 is going to be the last dance for the Rams with McVay, Stafford, Donald. I think all three, it's the last year. And I think that they're going to make one final push at it. I completely agree with you. I think the element of Baker and the fun that they had and all of the different elements there to sort of enjoy that last year and that last 6 weeks without, the pressures of having to defend their title and get into the playoffs, I think contributed a lot. But I also think the competitor in him didn't want his last season as a head coach to read and broke the record for greatest number of losses by a Super Bowl champion. So I think the competitor in him wants to come back for one more and really try to, have a better season than they did in 22 and make one more run at this thing and then ride out into the sunset for the time being. So I think the Rams really need to approach this as the last year with their core, with their aging core, Stafford putting it together, Donald, Ramsey, McVay, all of them coming together as the nucleus for one final run.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. And, we'll have all offseason, Jamal, to get into what they do in the draft, what they do in free agency, because there's going to have to be some moves. And obviously there's not a lot of money to move around. And I don't want to spend that time tonight because I'll just being frank, I haven't done a lot of research to give some definitive stuff. And so, but obviously that's going to be a really fun discussion as we get into, March 15th, the start of free agency and the draft at the end of April, and see what this team does and what they add and build specifically in the trenches in terms of star power, but also depth and also the draft of what they can do. And remember Logan Bruss coming back, their highly first draft pick last year, and what he can do and whatnot. So that's for a later discussion. But for now, the head of this team, and Jamal, we've talked about it. We've had Jordan Rodriguez, Rams beat writer, on the show before. She's said it. Les Snead is the GM. He's the brain. He's great. But he obviously does a lot of really, really good things for this team. He's made this team the forethought of discussion in terms of how you build rosters. But as of at least this past year, and I assume as long as he's here, the true brain trust and leader of this team is Sean McVay. And I thought it was so fascinating that if you need to get approval from Stan Kroenke, it's not Les Snead or Kevin Demoff that goes to Stan Kroenke. It's Sean McVay that goes and says, here's what we're doing. I just need you to sign off on it. Showing that he is the brain of this iteration of the Los Angeles Rams, which I think when he was hired, based on his age, his youth, the excitement they had, was something they wanted him to take control over. And obviously it's a collaboration, and obviously Kevin Demoff and Les Snead have their different arms and how they run this thing and move this thing. But when you have someone like McVay, who's truly the face and the brain of an organization, when you lose that, it could turn into a real long rebuild unless you do it very well. So I think hopefully these conversations, Jamal, with the upper management went like this, like, hey, this is probably my last year. Maybe 1-2 more. His contract, what? Is he 4 years left on his contract that he just signed? So he's got 4 years left.
That he runs that out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not happening. So hopefully the conversation went, so it's not every single year is this it. He went, hey, this is my last year, or hey, I got 2 years, whatever. So the team now knows, okay, this is our window, and we have to have a plan in place for what happens after. And I think, and this is where we're turning the conversation now, you can obviously counter and comment on what I said, but I think this is now where this offensive coaching hire becomes so important, because you never plan this, especially when you're the head coach. Like, you're the guy, it's your job, you're the brain, you're the face. But seeing where this organization is, seeing where they want to continue to be, seeing being in here in LA, this hire, I think, has a lot of ramifications, because if you get it right, this hire could end up being the next head coach of this team. So really big thing we're going to get into. Obviously, we kind of talked about last episode, Jamal, some potential OCs before we even knew if he was coming back or not. But now we can kind of dive in a little deeper but just kind of your thoughts on all that I brought up.
Yeah, Ryan, I completely agree with you. And I think there's a conversation here with management. I think it's a great point about, look, we love you. You've obviously been the center of the brain trust for the last 6 years, but we can't keep doing this Brett Favre dance every year. So is this it, or do we have some sense of stability beyond this year, or are we going to kind of call it this year, but we got to kind of know a little bit to do our contingency planning? So I completely agree with you, Ryan. I will let you dictate how you see the coaches come out, because I have my theory, and what I would do is something that's so far off the traditional that I'll let you sort of lead this discussion, and when you want me to interject, because I have a feeling my answer is going to sort of blow up the whole plan that we have in terms of segments. So why don't you go first, and then I will give you what I think I would do if I were Kroenke and Les Snead, and what you probably should do even.
Well, no, I mean, the beauty is we don't ever have segments. We just jump on here, hit record, and go. So, we did our last Chargers segment, our last live, as if we were the ownership group, or if we ran this team, what would we do with that situation? So I want to hear it now. I'm excited to hear what you got. So what would you do? How are you blowing this thing up?
Ryan, here's what I would do if I were the brain trust. You have to remember 6 years ago, look at the splash that was made in terms of hiring McVay, 31 years old, boy wonder, the genius, and it just instantly revitalized this offense and this fan base and this franchise, and really sort of solidified LA having football again. I think once you set that precedent, you have to sort of look at another inflection point here. Now, boy wonder is on the verge of burnout, whether it's 2022 or 2023, but this chapter of his life is going to come to a close now in 12 months. I fully believe that, and he's on for his next challenge. So the question becomes, how do you maximize this 1 year for him? How do you make it the most enjoyable for him? How do you make it the most creative for him? Because that in turn is going to give you the biggest on the field success. But then B, how do you set yourself up to continuously be that innovator as an organization moving forward? And to me, the answer is this, Ryan. I would actually not hire an OC. I would have McVay be the de facto OC, get back to his roots of being able to do the play calling exclusively, and really bring the joy back in coaching through the creativity of the offense, and allow him to do less of kind of the overarching head coach type of stuff, and really focus a little bit more offensively, while of course being the head coach, but allowing him to pick and choose his spots. And then I would hire a coordinator who is coach in waiting, and I would pay that coordinator like an NFL coach this year, with the expectation that when McVay is done in 23, that individual takes the baton from McVay and moves forward. And that person, to me, I would hire DeMeco Ryans, because it gives you the opportunity to balance out McVay's offensive mind with Ryans' defensive mind. B, it gives McVay an opportunity, after he's seen his uncles and his godfathers and all of these folks that he's been around his whole life in terms of burnout and the importance of leaving an organization the right way. Imagine McVay being able to mentor Ryans for a year on some of the ins and outs of being a head coach. So when Ryans takes the role in 24, he's completely ready to go. And then C, Ryan, you're stealing him from the Niners, and how beautiful is that in terms of the rivalry and moving forward? A win for the Rams is a win, but the 49ers losing is like the Rams winning. And so I would pay Ryans $10 million a year to come and be the defensive coordinator and be the coach in waiting, with a full-on expectation that this is the last dance for McVay. Let McVay call the plays. Let them sort of split the duties in a sense where McVay's obviously the coach. He gets the last voice. But some of the things that he doesn't want to do, start putting that on Ryans' plate, So he starts building up the requisite knowledge and portfolio and experience to really be ready to take the train in 24 and feel like he's in the best possible position. You're giving Ryans the best bridge to be a head coach rather than take on some dumpster fire team that he's going to have to inherit a mess and try and turn around. And B, you give McVay a different feel and a different flavor of the 23 season that re-inspires him, that gives him energy to get him through the year, as opposed to just the same mundane type of grind where inevitably by week 8, week 10, week 12, he's going to feel that fatigue because he's been flirting with it for so long. So that would be my solution, Ryan, a McVay, Ryans, collection to bring the Rams back to legitimacy and bring them back to be the forefront of how you think about organizational design in the NFL.
I love everything you said. That's a very fun way to think about it. 2 thoughts on DeMeco Ryans, because I love that. One, obviously, that's with the sense that Raheem Morris gets a head coaching job, yes?
Correct.
So, yeah, which I truly believe he will get. I think it's unless his interviews go horribly wrong, which I heard last year he had pretty good interviews. He just maybe was a year away. I think he'll get. Obviously, DeMeco Ryans also having some head coaching interviews, but I think he may be kind of the guy left out in that situation, just being only a second year coordinator and being a defensive guy makes it so hard. Now, the other thought is, because I think that's a slam dunk, is how do you, and there's ways to creatively do it, and the Rams are obviously a creative organization, but when you have those horizontal moves, the other franchise can block you. And the Niners obviously would want nothing to do with DeMeco Ryans going to their rival to be this DC. But I know if you do I'm pretty sure, and you might know better, but if you add on like assistant coach and different types of levels, you can get around that blocking. But I know if it's a horizontal move, that team can block you. So that would be the only thing that would hinder that plan, because everything about it I love. And for those, if you remember, was it 2017 and 2018 or 20 and 2019? I can't remember exactly, but the Rams didn't really have an OC during that time. They had a run game coordinator and a pass game coordinator. And that's how Shane Waldron ended up getting the job with the Seahawks as their OC, which isn't a lateral move because he was just a pass game coordinator and moved up. And so that's something the Rams could absolutely do as well. Instead of having, like you said, a true de facto OC, just having a run and pass game coordinator that can help facilitate things for Sean McVay. And those were some of the best offensive years for this Rams team, even with Jared Goff at quarterback, for when you had those, because you almost have 3 minds instead of just 2 plus the quarterback coach. So there's a lot of interesting ways to go about doing this. And a lot of, I think that's what makes this offseason exciting, is that we'll see if they go this kind of different route and this different build. Obviously, they build the roster differently than all teams. They've built the coaching staff differently in years past. And year over year, they built the coaching staff different. So I would probably lean more towards getting a true, strong offensive coordinator. But listening to you talk about it, Jamal, I do kind of love that thought. And I think there's definitely something to be said if, let's say, DeMeco Ryans, it doesn't happen because San Francisco can block it in whatever mind. I think there's other really, really good defensive coordinators out there. A name that you brought up, I think, last time on our show, Evero from Denver.
Yep.
If the Broncos, whoever they hire, doesn't retain Evero, and Evero's now had 2 head coaching interviews. I think you brought up the Rams even interviewing him as a head coach if McVay retired. If he is not retained by the new Denver staff, that is a no-brainer to me to bring him, because he knows the organization, knows a lot of the players. He's now getting those head coaching interviews. So obviously he knows the entire gambit of the organization in terms of offense, defense, special teams. There's so many fun ways to look at that, because there's the other sense too, Jamal, of, okay, we bring in a bright defensive mind, whether that's Evero. If they can somehow get DeMeco Ryans, that's a slam dunk. some of these younger, maybe secondary guys that are, I mean, maybe even you elevate a guy on the staff, an Eric Henderson to DC, who arguably could get taken by Raheem Morris if he gets a head coaching job. So maybe you elevate him in that regard. And then you bring in a bright offensive mind that can take some of the plate off of Sean McVay, or you bring in a young offensive mind that would have to be molded by Sean McVay, and you bring in an old time special teams coach that can do some of the hierarchy head coaching stuff. And I think that is something that also would be interesting, and that I'm not saying a lot of teams do this, but when you see coaches get dismissed during the season, the interim head coach 8 times out of 10 ends up being the special teams coordinator, just because I feel like they just don't have as much on their plate. So if you bring in that football guy that's been around forever, he can take some of the mundane head coaching stuff and let Sean McVay just focus on the offense. And like you said, which I totally agree with, is very important, get back to having fun coaching offense and not worrying about being the administrator, the brain trust that has to run everything. And yeah, you got me thinking, Jamal, because there's a lot of fun ways they can go about this.
Yeah, Ryan, and I think that, and I love your variance of this. You know, there's another element to this, Ryan, and I don't want to get political on the show. Obviously, you and I are not, political fans in any way, shape, or form. But when you look at the larger conversation in the NFL and the lack of minority coaches in the NFL year over year in that conversation, what comes with that conversation also is that a number of minority coaches, when they get the opportunity to be a head coach, are always in these impossible situations, these impossible rebuilds, these sort of heaps of crap organizations. And then in 2 years, if they can't miraculously turn it around, they get the can. And so how amazing would it be if the Rams, with an Evero, with the Ryans, actually set up a situation here where, look, you're the coach in waiting, and organizationally put that right below the head coach and above the coordinator to avoid the NFL red tape of this being a lateral move, but actually have this concept of mentorship over the course of 1 year as you are gearing up for the role. And so even though it is going to be a rebuild, look, in 2024, I fully expect the Rams to be in full-on rebuild mode. We have set you up for success and the expectations of what that rebuild is going to entail, and empower you, invest in you to be able to do that and be realistic in terms of what that looks like. That would be so innovative, such innovative thinking. It would be the perfect next chapter to Les Snead and that brain trust in terms of organizational design. And those are the kinds of things, Ryan, that win over an LA fan base. And if the Rams sort of represent how they think about succession planning, organizational design, setting up minority coaches to be successful moving forward, let me tell you, you have won so many fans over to be Rams fans that were either fans of other teams in LA or just not football fans at all, that come over to be Rams fans and truly become LA's preeminent football team and have a fan base the way the Lakers do and the Dodgers do. That's the way you start doing it. Because look at what the Lakers did with Jerry Buss. They brought the Laker girls. They made it Showtime. They completely revolutionized how the game of basketball was played. And look at what the Dodgers did, which was even greater. They're the ones that gave Jackie Robinson the opportunity to be a Major League Baseball player, to be a Dodger. And even though it was the Brooklyn Dodgers, it was still the Dodgers, and so many fans remained the Dodgers because of what they represented as a franchise in terms of moving society forward. Here's an opportunity, maybe not at that degree, maybe not at that level of impact, but here is an opportunity for the Rams to be able to do something similar in the ethos of Los Angeles sports. And let me tell you, the fans will flock to you if you do that. So if you're thinking bigger picture, beyond just how do the Rams get back into contention in 2023 and replicate some of the 2021 magic, and you're really looking at this from a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year roadmap and runway, to be one of LA's preeminent teams, I think you got to start thinking a little bit out of the box in terms of what you do after McVay.
Yeah, no, that's such a great talking point, and one with so much validity, and it makes so much sense, and would obviously resonate so well in this city, in this country, and this culture dynamic that we have in general, and deservingly so. There's a lot of talking points out there that are just talking points and political, and this isn't one of them. I mean, if a coach is good, and he happens to be, as you mentioned, a candidate that at another team is in a dumpster fire, that is in an impossible situation, this is an organization that isn't like that. It's built differently in what they've done since Sean McVay's been here, and they've been creative, they've been fun, they've gone against the grain, and so whoever the coach is going to be put in a really good possible situation to succeed. And so whoever that may be, that's the important thing, is will they have more than a 1-year thing like that we've seen with the Houston Texans for the past 2 years? Will they have the opportunity to take over, whether it be the roster or whether it be the decision-making or whatever it may be, something that they can build and grow and have the full support of the ownership, of management, to see out that plan? And I think that's really important. And the last thing, and then we can wrap up, Jamal. The last thing I'll say in terms of lasting memory or lasting importance in LA, and we've brought him up before, but the succession plan that makes a lot of sense. And again, it goes into how long Sean McVay wants to be here, whether it's, if he told him, hey, I got 1 more year, if he said, I'm here, we'll see you again at the end of the year, if it's 2 years, whatever. Lincoln Riley, down at USC. Cowboys are, at the time of this recording, are going to win this game. So I think Mike McCarthy's probably safe because he at least wins 1 playoff game. So the Dallas job is staying closed. And even if it wasn't, I think Sean Payton would be hired there tomorrow if they were to lose this, if they had lost this game. So I think now that Lincoln Riley is here in LA, and a lot of it depends, I truly believe, and this is a larger discussion that we can do on our USC show and later down the line on the Rams show. But I truly believe, I don't think Lincoln Riley leaves USC until he at least plays in a natty. I kind of lean towards wins a natty, but I think he knows his legacy, and that all he did at Oklahoma, never played a natty, never won a playoff game. Now coming to USC, we know the year, we talked about it a lot on the LA Football Show, what they've done. But I think he knows his legacy is going to be contingent on at least playing in a natty, but probably winning one, or he won't even be top 10 if he never even plays in one. So I don't think he leaves USC till he plays in one or wins one. But if they do that at USC next year or in 2 years, and McVay stays for a year or 2 years, and then they win the natty, then I would not be shocked at all if when McVay retires and they say, hey, Lincoln, you've already captured the LA audience. USC fans love you. You brought a natty, or you played in a natty to LA. We have 1 Super Bowl, but we want to get back to that. I'm not saying Sean McVay's not going to do it again, but let's just pretend for whatever he doesn't. That is the ultimate succession plan, but obviously that's contingent on a lot of factors. So not saying that's one that they should pursue, but that's one let's just keep out there in the universe and see what happens.
No, I think so, Ryan. I think that's a great one. And you and I have sort of talked about this in the past, and not to deviate this into a USC conversation at all, but you don't leave Oklahoma for USC at that age, being from West Texas, without thinking about USC, whether it's in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or 7 years, as being a stepping stone to the NFL. And furthermore, once you get a taste of living in Los Angeles and living in a $17 million Palos Verdes home, it is very hard to live anywhere else in the country, or even the world for that matter. And so when you put those 2 factors together, it screams the opportunity for Lincoln Riley to be the head coach of the Rams. And I completely agree with you. I think it would be a little bit premature in a year But I think it would be the ideal succession plan if McVay, behind closed doors, said, look, you don't have to worry about the Brett Favre drama for me anymore. I sort of went through the mental exercise that I had to. I'm in it. I want to play out, I want to coach out till the end of my contract or close to the end of my contract. Then that becomes an even more real and plausible succession plan moving forward. And Ryan, just because we've been so out there this show, let me throw another element to it. What happens in the event, let's say the Rams, play next year, God forbid, let's say Stafford gets hit, gets a concussion, says, you know what, I'm kind of calling it for the season, I'm on IR. Rams absolutely tank. And then guess what? They have an opportunity to draft Caleb Williams. Is there an opportunity to then have Lincoln Riley coach his college quarterback, the guy who followed him from Oklahoma to USC, and then be able to coach him at the pro level? So I think there's a lot of legs to this potential succession plan. I think it would be, again, maybe a 2-3 year out rather than a 1 year out. But depending on where McVay's head is, I think it could be the perfect scenario and could potentially kind of revolutionize the model as well of succession planning in the NFL, where look at your great college coaches first, who are already so well-versed with the market, know the local talent so well, understand the challenges of coaching in that particular area of the country, and are very, very innovative, especially at a time when so much of college principles come into the NFL now, and that gap between the college game and the NFL game is becoming narrower and narrower from a stylistic perspective. So that could be another incredible way that Les Snead and company sort of reinvent what organizational design is really all about.
Yeah. I mean, and to the last point before we close, yes, it has to be more than a year. This is a 2, 3, 4 year down the line thing. It's not next year. So McVay has to either stay longer or, God forbid, they hire someone else.
Becomes sort of the coach after the guy after McVay.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
maybe that's what I was going to say. Successor flames out, and then it becomes Riley.
That's exactly what I was going to say. God forbid McVay retires after this year. They hire one, and he lasts 2 years, and then they go to Lincoln Riley. So, but yeah, I mean, you could argue that Lincoln Riley, after 1 year, I know the season didn't end how everyone wanted, but after 1 year, you could argue he's a more recognizable, beloved coach. He's top 4 already in the city. I mean, you could maybe even argue top 2. You could probably go Roberts with the Dodgers and Sean McVay, and then probably Lincoln Riley, because I don't think anyone loves the Lakers coach. Obviously, we just had a big, long Charger segment about Brandon Staley. I don't think he's beloved right now in the city.
Chip isn't exactly Mr. Congeniality. So.
Yeah. So after 1 year, Lincoln's arguably 2 or 3 in the city. And so if he just stays here, it's a crazy thought. So, but much more realistic is everything you brought up. And I agree with, and, until a decision's made, there'll be talks about offensive coordinators. We have an article out by Ryan Anderson, just came out on the top 3 prospects for offensive coordinator for the Rams. So make sure to check that out on LAFBnetwork.com. And we'll talk more about it on our next show if a decision hasn't been made by then, which I kind of anticipated they're gonna wait till after the Super Bowl. I think they'll probably wait till after the dust settles with the head coaching hires and after this Super Bowl run of these playoff teams, and maybe be able to interview some of those people is probably when we'll see that decision made. So we shall see. Anything else, Jamal? Or I think we've hit everything we need to hit on this show.
I think, Ryan, we've hit it, but if this episode is any indication, my goodness, the lab that is the off season in terms of our show for the Rams is going to be magical. So Stay tuned, folks, for the next 6 months here before we kick into training camp, because I think there's going to be so much fun things to talk about.
Exactly. So much. And it's going to be a fun off season, Ramley. I know it's been a tough season, but it's going to be a fun off season. So thank you for tuning in. This is the LA Football Show. For Jamal Madni, I'm Ryan Dyrud. We'll talk to you all later in the week. Be well, be safe. Talk to y'all then.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.